All right. Welcome to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. We are here today with a very special guest named Glen Ingram, and he's going to be running through kind of his backstory of what he's been doing online. He's got a very interesting kind of path that led him into kind of an intersection with both David Hood and I around 2013-14, where we were all kind of crossing paths in looking at search engine optimization as really a thing that we wanted to nail down. So during this podcast, I think you're going to really have your eyes open to a lot of different paths, kind of like all roads lead to Rome sort of thing, and different ways you can get into looking at getting out of your kind of cubicle job, getting out of your day job, building a business online. And full disclosure, Glen is also a business partner of mine in another venture that we'll probably wind up talking about a little bit later. But I'm real excited to have Glen on. And David, do you have any opening thoughts or framework that you want to kind of lay down?
No, I was looking at my messages, and Glenn and I had messaged back and forth a couple times, like in 2014, and 2015. So he's old school, been around a while. So I'm really curious to hear his story. How you doing, Glenn?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start by telling people a little bit about you personally? Your where do you live? Tell me about your family, stuff like that.
Sure. We live in Las Vegas, Nevada. We also have a place over in Huntington Beach, California. We have two 22-year-old twin daughters that just both graduated last summer from UCI. So I'm representing the girls today with a little UCI swag. That's kind of from our family aspect. We kind of like being out here in the Southwest after we moved from Nebraska about 6 years ago. And I do not miss snow or cold weather.
I thought I sensed heard a little bit of a Nebraska accent.
Yeah, you mean proper English?
It's like a specific Midwest. It's kind of close to Minnesota. I have family in Nebraska, so I understand. All right. Well, so tell me about, like, at a high level, like right now, what are some of your biggest business priorities?
Right now it's just communication, because we've gone down a little bit of a different path with digital marketing. Excuse me. About a year and a half ago, I fell into what's called web accessibility and started to understand that most websites don't work for people with disabilities. And so with traveling that path, it's really opened up a lot of doors, windows, everything you could think of, because very few people are in the niche and it's exploding a great deal. So I'm just trying to communicate with as many business owners, marketers, anything I can out there in online, offline, just to help educate and inform people, because there are certain people that are taking advantage of them from a legal aspect. So that's the main thing we're focusing on.
Yeah, I know that you teach people about web accessibility. Do you also have clients that you service as well?
Yeah.
So is that like the vast majority of your business is web accessibility services and training?
We still do a lot of optimization. I mean, optimization is always going to be a part of our
SEO.
company. It was just a different revenue stream, a different leg of the company, basically, and something that we could specialize in that we weren't competing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry.
Yeah, so like that little framework, this is something I've been thinking about actually just this morning. I realized that what we're doing with search engine optimization is really getting a website accessible to more people, right? Because it's available there for them to consume. And this accessibility is just a little bit bigger circle on that same exact concept.
Well, yeah, when I first started looking at this and understanding that 1 out of 5 people has some form of a disability, and I was charging customers a fair amount of money to rank their websites higher on Google, I thought I was doing them a disadvantage by excluding a 20% of the population from them. So just by making the site accessible to someone that's blind or deaf or colorblind or can't use a mouse would increase their return on investment.
Interesting. Okay. And I think that the project that you guys are working on, where would somebody go to find out more information, to get training and stuff on that?
We have a Facebook page and we have a website. The company is called Web Alley. So it's web, WEBA11Y.net's the website. Web Alley is a group of Facebook pages we have. Alley stands for accessibility. It's one of those little geeky things that some of us like. There's 11 letters between A and Y in accessibility. So it's just a short way to say accessibility.
And so what I'll do is I'll put a link in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put a link to weballey.net. so that you don't have to try to figure out exactly where to put it. But I think he put it pretty descriptively, pretty accurately in terms of weba11y.net. All right. Well, so how far back do you want to go? Let's get started with your story, Glenn. And how far back do you want to go?
Well, I can only go 51 years because I only probably remember about 45, but we can start wherever you like.
Go back to as early as you want. You can start wherever you want.
Okay. Well, I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. We were there until about the third grade. My father had an excavating company, and so he was buying property and building up property, and then the state decided to use eminent domain and purchase our property to build a penitentiary. So it was time to move because we didn't want to stay once they put the walls up and all the fence and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
So we moved down to southern Missouri because my parents have been traveling down there for quite a while. And so I grew up down by Branson in Springfield, Missouri. It was kind of a fun, good place to grow up. Definitely didn't have some of the challenges that people have in the larger cities. Got to play a lot of sports as a short white guy, so that was kind of fun. And then I moved back up to Nebraska to go to school at University of Nebraska at Omaha. And so up until 6 years ago, we moved out here. I lived all my life between Nebraska and Missouri.
And that
what did you get your degree?
So where Glen's from in I say Missouri, but it's Glen, maybe 60, 70 miles, give or take from place to place, I think. And so Glen being from having that kind of overlap with that southern Missouri was one of the things that I think we originally started kind of talking about, right?
Yeah.
And then obviously the way I mispronounced Missouri, but going back to your degree, Glen, this get on with it. I wanted to interject because I had a chance to say Missouri, I think.
Sure. I'm one of those people that has a similar story that we kind of hearing about. I went to school for accounting. Went to school for accounting because the plan was to go to law school and become an attorney. Well, towards the end of my freshman year, my dad kept bugging me to go over and talk to this attorney that was a friend of his that kind of helped him put together that deal with the state as they were negotiating to purchase our property. And so I went over and talked to this attorney that I'd known since I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And, just in communication, talking, he said, "You're looking for a job?" And back in the day, was like, I'm always looking for a better job. Well, they had a job coming open as a runner for the law firm because the kid that was doing it was graduating in a month. So I took that job with them. And with working with attorneys, especially, these were very, I'm going to say big corporate attorneys. I mean, they were Harvard, Yale. They were Ivy League guys in Omaha, Nebraska. Just scared the hell out of me. Because when you see 60, 70-year-old guys that are multimillionaires working 50 hours a week, I thought this is kind of like a drug. It's either a drug or something you become used to doing so much to reach a certain level that you don't know how to stop. And so I'd actually joined the reserves when I was in high school to pay my way through college. And about 3 years into my degree with accounting, I realized I don't want to be an attorney, and I really don't like accountants. And then Desert Storm, I got a phone call and said, "You know what? I know you're in Nebraska, young man. There's no ocean around you, but you have to go play in the desert a little bit." And when I came back from the desert, I don't know, a little bit of growing up, reality or whatever, I realized I don't want to be an attorney. I don't want to be an accountant. And so I quit school with about a semester and a half left to go to get my accounting degree.
So you quit school. You didn't finish your degree at University of Nebraska. And then what did you do after you quit school?
I took a job working for a courier company. With doing that, my dad was always an entrepreneur, so I think it kind of just was inbred in me. Before long, I left to start my own courier business, sold that off, went back to school, thought I wanted to do some stuff in the medical field, played around with there for a little bit. I kind of like going to school. I like being or learning things. And then one thing led to another. Like I said, after the Gulf War, I had one marriage that didn't work out too well, and got into transportation, operations management for companies like that. And then from doing operations management, once our twins were born, my wife made the comment to me, "You can make a lot more money selling for someone that you can't run their business, Glenn. Maybe you should try that." So I said, "Okay." So I went into sales, and I went sales and transportation, gaming industry, and a long kind of circuitous path that led me to, in 2004, taking a position with a phone book company that I could have had in 2000, but I thought it was a really stupid job. And I finally took the job because I was in a bad position with my current employer, and they really cut down my product that I could make for commissions. So I took the stupid job, and I was right. It was a stupid job, but it paid a lot of money. It was the best part-time job I had. And as they started to migrate from the book over into digital marketing, it was more interesting because the phone book I thought was just a stupid job. And so I started trying to learn as much as I could. And so I would be on webinars 2-3 days a week, whether it be, a Moz thing or a search thing. There were all different types of the big companies back then that would do a webinar and bring in someone from Google, someone from Microsoft, someone to listen to. And so I did that for about a year and then migrated over into helping them kind of grow and expand their digital marketing until all of a sudden one day, I think it was about 2012 or 2013, the CEO over in the UK fired the president in the US. They had a little bit of a disagreement on who was in charge of what. And the next day, a group of us had a meeting with the CEO in the UK, and I realized that his path was so far different than mine that this just wouldn't work anymore. And a few months later, I was on my own with my agency. Kind of scared the heck out of my wife when I quit my job, but you know what? I'd been selling for years, so what's the difference between selling for somebody else instead of selling for us? We made more money when I sold for us.
Okay, that's cool. So I want to circle back around and confirm a few things and clarify. So you served in the Gulf War in the 90s, is that correct?
Correct.
You were active duty. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the Navy Reserves. We set up a hospital off the coast of Saudi Arabia on a small island called Bahrain.
Well, thank you for putting your lives at risk for my personal freedom. I appreciate that. Nobody's ever shot a gun at me, and I hope to live my whole life where no one ever points a gun at me.
Thank you. Yeah, they never shot guns at us, but one night Saddam shot 7 Scuds at us. That was kind of a fun night.
Scuds, those are like those missiles where they shoot them over and they're kind of trying to shoot up and then back down on top of you. Yeah, that's pretty scary, I guess. Maybe that's worse.
Yeah, kind of. What's scary is when you realize how accurate they were there were actually pieces of wood. So they're like parts of crates as part of this missile that was built that they shot hundreds of miles. And the Patriots we had took out 6 of them. One of them missed us by about a mile and put a crater in the ground the size of a football field.
Wow. That's crazy. And then so you took a courier job and then you created your own courier company. What was the arc on that courier company? How long did you run that for?
I had it for a couple of years until I decided that it just wasn't the path that I wanted to go on anymore. And so I was able to sell my portion out to my partners, go on.
Okay. Was that a big payout or just more of like, I'm just trying to get rid of it and take my responsibility?
A little bit of both. I mean, this would have been like 95, 96 or whatever. So, to start a company back then and have a third of it worth, about $50,000 wasn't a bad thing for back in the mid 90s.
Hey, sometimes if you just want to leave and you get paid $50,000 to leave, that's great. Mm-hmm. And let's see. So you worked for a phone book company and they were selling, you were the people who sold the ads in the phone book.
We put squares on a piece of paper.
But they realized that was, I don't know, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. They realized that the digital marketing was kind of the future.
Yeah, the phone book usage and distribution and sales were going down, and they saw this thing with the internet and how could we get into it. It's kind of interesting. They followed a similar model that a lot of the newspapers have. Like when Warren Buffett started buying newspapers a few years ago, it wasn't because he saw a big vision of the newspaper industry. He saw a sales staff and a customer base that they could sell other products to. The problem with these large companies is they outsource everything. Even the management of it and the control of it. So at the phone book company I worked for, your website was a company that outsourced everything over to build that in Philippines. The entire optimization was outsourced to a company in India. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having outsourcers. I have outsourcers, but I have control over things. Things are done my way versus just telling someone, okay, we're going to sell your product. Go build it.
Yeah, I get a lot of complaints that I talk to from my clients about other companies that do that. And there's a lot of disconnect when you just kind of completely outsource the services that you're selling. And so there's a lot of low quality and they don't really know who to talk to a lot of times. So yeah, I'm not a super big fan of that, although it can work to some degree. Mm-hmm. Also, I want to point out, you said something that I really like. I think you said you really like to learn and study and learn new things.
Yeah, all the time. I'm not much of a reader, but I'll be on watching videos an hour or two a day. I'll be out reading different things online and stuff like that. Just trying to learn different aspects, whether it be personality, psychology, business, and stuff like that. So yeah.
I mean, that's probably one of the biggest keys, if not the biggest key to building your own business. I have had to personally grow so much more since I started my own business. And it's really, without that, I wouldn't have been successful at all. And there's unlimited things to learn. And I think that it's the mindset of being like, hey, this is fun and enjoy this. It's good for you. It's good for your brain. It's good for your business. It's good for your pocketbook. So definitely happy to hear that.
That kind of learning thing, Glenn talks about, like he enjoyed, like he changed the wording. He's like, the education. He's like, no, I enjoyed learning things. That's one of the things for me about being online. That's just so, it's different now than it was in the 90s, right? It's not a library, and libraries are great and they smell like books, and I like books. I got, tons of books, but now things are just so much more accessible. But, in that way, there's just, everything is just right there. And like, there's not a day that goes by that I don't, find something that's a little curious, or I try to understand a little bit more. And I'm not the only person like that. I think most of, people have some curiosity, and if they're online, a little something gets their attention, they kind of go off. And so, one of the things I look at doing, like kind of just from a personal, like career perspective, is helping people notice things that are important and impactful. And so, to be able to do that, one of the things I know I need to do is to notice things and then to figure out whether they're impactful. And if so, how, or if so, for whom. And so I love that kind of concept. Like, it's one of the things that I think about a lot. Right. And so I think there's something in common for people who are kind of curious about learning new things, right? And kind of maybe understanding things a little differently. Opening up their box, so to speak, opening up their mind a little bit from what would have probably transpired if we would have been the previous generation, where many people really we're a lot more stuck, so to speak, in the context, the community that they were in. People didn't tend to get exposed to as many things. There was a lot more control on that flow of information, so to speak. So that's just a thought I had kind of on
That's great.
that element. Yeah.
Well, and
So
I've been fortunate over the years of being in different sales careers in different industries, and to be able to get to meet different businesses, different business owners, and just to learn from them. I mean, the one that always sticks out in my head, back when I was in the transportation industry, I went to see some company up kind of like the mountains north of, between San Bernardino and Riverside area. And so I met this company that was about limestone, and I'm thinking we're going to be doing some type of, construction stuff or whatever coming from them. And we ended up not being the right company for them, but it was one of the coolest times I ever had. I didn't realize those LA mountains have the highest content of food grade calcium in their limestone. And so a lot of the toothpaste and cereal that we eat comes from the limestone in those mountains. I geeked out there for an hour talking to the guy. I realized I'm not going to get a stick of business out of this guy, but I just want to learn a little bit about what he was talking about.
yeah. And also, kind of like if you're getting started, it's not a bad idea to take a sales job. It's something that you approach it not from the I'm going to make a bunch of money, which you can, but from the I'm going to learn sales, because sales is going to be useful no matter what you do. You're always selling. As Fletch put it, you brought this up to me. You're not just selling to other people, you're selling to yourself. You got to sell the right things to yourself. So getting those sales skills is so valuable.
Well, I think you just learn to talk, create conversations, and get nuggets that you can talk to people. I remember one time back in the phone book, if somebody was interested in getting a job there, they would put them out with one of their salespeople for half a day, kind of right along to see what the job was about. And so I had this young lady that I knew from a previous career. So they put her with me. And so we would hit this kind of like industrial strip area, storage area, whatever. So you had a lot of contractors. So we walked into one guy and I started talking to him about transportation. Walked into the next guy, I started talking to him about irrigation. The next guy started talking about, sprinkler systems, and then landscaping, and just kind of down the road. And we got back in the car and she's like, oh my God, you have to understand all these businesses? I said, no, you have to know enough to start a conversation, get them talking. And then you're not a salesperson, you're someone having a conversation.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach. That's kind of how I was an engineer before, and so I wasn't like a sales guy and had to learn sales. And part of my process is I just try to talk to people, about what I know and try to see how I can help them. So let's transition into your agency. So 2012, 2013, you started your own agency. Now, what services did you sell?
I started off wanting to just sell search engine optimization. And it took less than a month for me to realize these people who need help with optimization have a website that's kind of crappy. So I had to get into the website business. And I think some of the reason that I'm at right now where I'm in my career was because of that time. I did what a lot of us did. I found somebody on work people per hour, Fiverr, stuff like this, to try and find someone to build a website, lay out the expectation, this is what I want you to do. And it never came back, even in the same platform I wanted to be in. So from that point, getting burnt with that, I found a guy in Omaha, Nebraska, where I started out, again on Craigslist, web developer. Came in there and this guy was wanting, I think like stupid simple, like 10, 20 bucks an hour. And I'm like, no, how about I pay you X amount per site. And what he was looking at was like $200 or $300 to build a site. I'm like, I'll pay you $500 for every site you build. That way we won't have any problems. Then inevitably after about 6 months, now he wanted $750 a site, $1,000 a site. And we started seeing what I was charging for him. And so I'm like, I need to learn how to do this myself. So I was very, very fortunate when I started this company that my neighbor across the street from me had the largest .NET Nuke hosting company in the world. And the guy 2 doors down from me had a web agency, web design company they'd been doing for years. I mean, he did all like Susie Orman's work. He did a lot of university work, a lot of high level work. And they were both very forthcoming and willing to share information. So I think it really helped me start off my company with a solid foundation.
So you started selling like web design and kind of like web edits and stuff like that for people. So SEO and web design is the core part of your agency. Mm-hmm. And so how long was that your agency?
It still is today.
Still is today.
Yeah, we just moved from Nebraska to California within a year of starting our company, like anybody with good sense to do. When they have daughters that decide they want to go to school in California, you pick up roots and you go.
And they're like, well, now I want to go to school in New York.
Yeah, then we'd have kicked them on the backside, but they were dead set on California, so that all worked out. They actually moved out. Their decision, we put it up to them. We actually moved out before their senior year of high school so they could have residency in California. So they actually did their senior year in a school that was brand new to them. So
wow, brave girls.
Yeah.
Make a daddy proud with that, because that's hard for a girl to move for senior year.
Yeah. And to go from, again, a larger school in Omaha where there were 300 or 400 kids in your graduating class to Huntington Beach, California, where I think there were like 1,200 kids in the graduating class.
Wow. That's crazy.
But it wasn't from the ocean, so I think that was balanced out for him.
I think accessibility is a natural part of your business, because to me it's something that's part of like the web design. It falls under that category.
I think that's why it was easier for us to pivot than last year. I traveled the country talking at different WordCamps, WordPress meetups, associations for restaurants, hotels, attorneys and stuff like that, just trying to spread the word and educate people. And I've said this to Fletch, I think it's been an easier transition for people who understood web standards and built their sites according to web standards, because accessibility is just an extension of web standards. But there are a lot of people out there that build websites and didn't do that. And for people that didn't have that kind of foundation, it's a big mind change.
So when you first got started, I think this is a critical thing that I want to focus a lot on, like the first 6 to 12 months of your business, because I think this is what a lot of people who maybe are thinking about starting their business, they're worried about, or they've just started it and they're running into some roadblocks. First of all, how did you start off trying to get clients?
Well, it's beyond the lawsuit's gone, so we can just talk realistically. I started my company before I quit my day job.
Okay.
And they ended up suing me. Long story. We'll get to that later.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I was the guy that made them have to file bankruptcy, evidently, according to my attorney's point of view. But anyway, I just started going out and selling. I actually, back then I thought I had a gold mine when I found a plugin that would make the website change language from English to Spanish and stuff like that. And so I found a young lady that spoke Spanish, and we literally went to the Hispanic part of Omaha, walked up and down the streets selling websites. We did that a lot. I had a lot of friends that were policemen, firemen, different teachers and stuff like that. And we would all go to the same watering holes. They got to where they would say, hey, you need a website every time I was around. And we just started building websites from there until I took some time off towards the end, went out for a week, and in a week I made $10,000 selling websites. And so I told my wife, this is it, I'm done, I'm quitting.
So let me kind of try to put it in my own simple terms, in terms of you just walked around your city and you've presented people with some opportunities for them to improve their business, basically.
I was old school sales. Yeah. I like going door to door. I like walking and talking to people. I know it makes some people cringe, but you know what? I've had phone books. I've had things thrown at me. I've been cussed at. I haven't had anyone shoot me or hit me yet. But it's kind of fun when you do that, and I still enjoy doing it to time today. When some of these lawsuits started in Huntington Beach, and we were over there about a year ago, I felt bad that my neighbors were being sued, and I hadn't informed them. So I literally made up a flyer, printed out some paper plot flyers, and went door to door to every restaurant and a lot of industrial areas, just saying, "Hey guys, you guys are being sued. I feel guilty that someone hasn't told you about this. I just want to share some information with you." Because it's kind of funny nowadays when you do it, no one goes door to door. So people are kind of like, "Who's this walking in my door?"
Yeah. It's, you just kind of have to get in front of people, and however that works, networking works for some people. There's also different ways to go about it. So in that first 6 to 12 months, was it just like wildly successful right out of the gate, or did you hit some major roadblocks that you had to overcome?
No, I'd been in sales for a long time. So with sales, I think it's the same way you run your business. I had small goals. So I knew I had a goal every month. I need to make this amount of money. And so I focused on that August, September, October, November. And as long as I made that amount of money to put in the bank, then I knew my wife covered all the bills for my wife and what she was kind of used to for an income from the phone book, we were okay. And it was kind of funny. I quit my job August 1st or 2nd. And so that's when we were officially doing it. We did a little bit part-time before that. And my wife comes down in January. The following year, I remember she was just doing her taxes. And she goes, "Do you know how much money this company made?" And I said, "I didn't miss a month," because that was all that was in my head. I had my monthly goals every month. She goes, "You made 97 grand doing this for 5 months full-time and part-time." I'm like, "Okay, well, is that okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, that was okay." I said, "But I didn't miss a monthly goal because I focused on the small numbers, and the big numbers took care of themselves."
That's pretty good. So the fact that you had the sales experience, I think that those, if you have no sales experience, for me, for like I did, there's going to be a bit more of a learning curve, I think, in making the sales, because the most important thing for business is to make sales, for most businesses at least.
So like one of the things I want to just expand on maybe a little bit is, so I have like face-to-face sales experience as well, right? When I was doing general contracting work, I'd climb around somebody's attic, and then I'd have to go down in their living room, so to speak, or their kitchen, and then talk to them about what I found and what it meant and how to fix things. And so there was a level of, I won't say comfort, because I was sweaty and dirty and gross and all grimy. But just a little bit of an experience there made it a little more comfortable than it would have been otherwise. I think I had a lot of shyness and maybe even like kind of social, social distancing. So what everybody's in the middle of now. I was kind of trying to do that back when I was like a teenager. But the thing that I came to start to understand with like personal connection, like, and Glenn, you can kind of correct me or interject because you have a lot more experience with this than I do, is I came to start to pull apart the relationship from the decision. And so for me in my digital marketing kind of career, I started looking at social interactions as a relationship, and I didn't have to try to close. Like I'm almost cringing sometimes when I see somebody a few bar stools over, like start a conversation with somebody they've never met and then try to say, "Okay, so let's go ahead and get started," like trying to like close somebody that just met, which maybe it works, but I say it's cringeworthy to me because like being able to watch some of it, it just looks uncomfortable. Like if I were there and I was trying to have a meal, or if I was just there wanting to talk to somebody, which is kind of one of the reasons people have kind of, a local hangout, watering hole, whatever you want to call it. Being okay with just starting a relationship and not like getting all the way to the close, right? If you're socially, unsure of yourself, or think you're awkward, just being able to go to a party and say hi to a couple people and shake hands and then leave, and it's like, that's a big win, right? You can kind of start a little of this and begin to build more comfort and more like understanding how reasonable it is to just say, "Hey, I'm going to start looking at developing a relationship instead of trying to get to the close." And what you realize is that by developing that relationship, you wind up getting so close to the actual decision, right? What you'd call in sales vernacular, like, closing a deal, that it's only a little bit that you've got to cover, instead of from before you've even started the relationship, it may look like it's a million miles off. Glenn, is that anything you want to maybe riff on or talk about more?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. Back with that trucking company, when I first got into sales, again, I'd be in operations management, running customer service, stuff like that. But I was always behind a computer. Well, back then, talking on the phone, behind a computer, or dealing with clients face to face, kind of a small nature. The first sales trip I took was to the Northeast. So I'm in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, never been out there before. And literally the first day, I don't think I left the hotel room because I was scared shitless. And then all of a sudden that day, I'm like, well, you know what? You're out here. You took this job. You told me we were going to do this stuff. And all of a sudden it hit me it registered or resonated with me. These people don't know you. If you act like an idiot or say something stupid, they're never going to see you tomorrow. So I said, okay.
And they won't remember it. Like
exactly.
It may live forever in our minds. They're going to forget about it 15 minutes after you leave. Like we're so locked into that belief we have in our brains about this thing. Yeah.
So I went out and I started making some calls and then went and talked to some more people. And it was such a fun, interesting, educational week now when you look back on it. I mean, the funniest thing was I had one guy basically ask me how much I was going to pay him as the traffic manager for him to give my company his company's freight. And I said, well, this is how we work. We can't really do that. I had one time, I don't know if you remember that movie with Eddie Murphy where he's a con man and he runs for Congress because his name is similar, Jeff Johnson.
Yes.
So you remember the time when he's sitting around going around with a bullhorn, speaking like an Hasidic Jewish person?
No, I don't.
You vote for Jeff. Jeff like you. You blah blah. He's doing that stuff. I'm in North Jersey at this crystal company, and I walk in there, and New Jersey has a high population of Hasidic Jewish people. And I'm at the wrong location. And this guy starts talking about giving me directions. And he says the post office, and he's talking as fast as Eddie does, which is faster than what I talk, with that same thing. And I'm trying to keep my face stuff, not laugh, saying, just focus, go past the post office, just focus. Because it just sounded, to me, it was like Eddie Murphy was just yelling at me, kind of like he was in the bullhorn. So it was just such a good learning experience and learning what life is in a different part of the country, because New York and New Jersey should be a different world and a different country at some point. But yeah, it was just kind of learning that. And I've told people for years, and I've told my wife, she goes, I can't sell. I said, let's go to a city 30, 50 miles away. Let's go for a day. Let's just go to the mall and just walk up and start talking to people. Because once you do that, you get that monkey off your back, as I've shared with Fletch and I've shared with other people. In my opinion, and I have a warped way of looking at things, the difference between sales and customer service is just telling somebody what you're going to do before you're your client. If you're good at taking care of clients, if you're going to do what's in their best interest, all you're doing is telling them what you're going to do and then ask them to trust you to do it. So yeah, I think I didn't have a problem talking with people after that point. And again, just learning, what Fletch was talking about when we stepped away for a second, David, was, going to a bar, enticing or starting a conversation and trying to close somebody. That's why for our people that are joining our thing, I have a sales process, and I explain to them, learn your sales process and follow a process. Because in my opinion, until you've learned about your client, learned what they want, what they need, what they're struggling with, you haven't earned the right to sell them anything. But if you take the time to ask your client questions, find out what they need and what they want, and if you can provide a solution, you're not selling them, you're just helping them with their inefficiencies.
Yeah, and David, when you stepped away, that little kind of framework I was talking a little bit about, you're more familiar with David Mills's framework of the traffic conversion and fulfillment, and which he later kind of clarified even more to relationship decision fulfillment, right? And looking at that relationship as kind of a form of traffic, like if you want to call it that, if you want to call it part of the sales process or part of your marketing. The relationship, just beginning a little bit of that process gets you closer to the point of being able to make a decision. And so I was kind of just in my own personal experience, I recall how much that began changing things for me. Like what Glenn talked about, it's not that different than customer service. If you learn about what your customer needs and then say, okay, I'm going to do that for you, it really it flips the script, so to speak, on feeling like this impending doom of trying to get closer and closer to that mountain of decision, of conversion, of closing a sale.
Yeah.
And just taking care of somebody that you can take care of, that you're going to take care of.
I think there's a mindset. There's definitely some massive mindset shifts that can dramatically help in multiple ways, help you make more sales and help it be like less of a psychological burden. I don't know when the script flipped for me on that, but I know that my approach is just something like, I'm just going to sit here and try to help. If I don't think I can make them money, I'm not going to sell to them. I'm going to tell them that. I'm going to tell them I don't think that they should buy SEO. I don't think it's a good value for them. And so that kind of promising that to myself and to the people that I sell to makes it a lot easier for me to sell. You might think, well, why wouldn't, if someone's willing to pay you money, why wouldn't you take it? It's because it's not about that individual sale. It's about my mindset, my sleeping at night, but also just about it enables me to sell more powerfully to the people who I really can help, and approaching it from a relationship standpoint. I really like that phrasing of it, because every sale is a relationship thing. Even if somebody's buying a book from Oprah or something, that's a relationship she has built with her audience by doing things in a certain way. And then back to Glen's point, I thought it was really cool. It was like, he talked to so many interesting people. That's a really cool way of putting talking about sales, because I realize, I look back and I go, man, I talked to some really weird people. Just last week, I talked to a guy who was like an official lord of an official Irish lord, and I didn't get the full backstory, but he was a really interesting guy. He had a really strong accent. It was a really fun conversation, and that is such a cool way to go about it. Like, what do you don't know what you're gonna get, and so don't be afraid of the sales. Even though I like to talk about how, like, your brain is lying to you. Your brain thinks you're gonna die when you go to do sales, and I think a lot of it has to do with, back in the day, 10, 20,000 years ago, you were in like a tribe of 50 or 100 people. And if you made a fool of yourself, that would mean that you wouldn't be able to procreate, right? And your brain still thinks that way, but it's not true. As Glen said, you never see those people again. So who cares? And nobody's shooting mortars at you, right? Like, it can't get that bad, right, Glen?
Yeah. Well, and I share with Fletch, I always kind of take a look. I try and look backwards from time to time, and what should I do? What shouldn't I do? And stuff like this. And a couple of years ago, I really kind of ran to the point where I had some clients that were taking up too much of my time. And so I had to evaluate, who's the right client for me? What should I do and what I shouldn't do? And I went through a couple of months, and I fired a few clients, and it was kind of like, oh, this feels so much better. I like this so much more. And so I thought, what did these clients have in common? And for whatever reason, I started the next week when I was doing a lot of work with one particular insurance company in the country that we do a lot of SEO for, a lot of agents. And so I started saying, okay, Mr. Customer, before we get started, we're going to take the first 30 minutes. I'm going to tell you about me, what motivates me, what my background, stuff like that. And then I want you to tell me about you. And at the end of that time, we either both agree, okay, let's talk business, or if one of us isn't comfortable, let's walk away now. Because if we don't have common business traits, common personal traits, this isn't going to be a good long-term business. So before we even talk business, I want to make sure we can relate as people, because if not, nothing else really matters. And it was kind of interesting that I quit bringing on trouble clients, and my conversion rate went up quite a bit.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
There's a practice. I think we may have even talked about it on one of the previous podcasts, David. And I don't know, it's an Asian tradition. It may be Japanese, where like the first time you may want to do business with someone, you have maybe a meal together, and it's like, it's taboo. Like, you don't talk about business. Like, that first time you encounter them, it's about kind of seeing whether or not as humans, you want to be in a relationship. And only then do you move beyond that, only after that first kind of meeting. I think I first heard that reported in some book I read about, some business person who went to, I think it was Japan, and, was supposed to go do a deal with somebody. And coming from kind of the perspective of our culture, okay, let's get to the chase here. Let's not waste anybody's time. Kind of jumped right into the pitch. And it was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I'd, just murdered somebody's mother in front of them or something like that. And so, I guess where I was kind of going with that is that we have a lot of ideas in our head about what needs to be done and what needs to be right, and needing to already be right. And what that does is it closes you off from that curiosity, right? Of, let me see whether or not this is a good situation. This is a good relationship. This is a good business deal to be in. I think that people who are like, I'm going to go close this sale today, or I'm going to, Glen talked about it. And you do, having goals and landmarks and benchmarks and things is probably a very good practice, because it keeps you on track as far as the activities that you're engaged in. But like going into any single sale and like, feeling like you're going to emotionally, psychologically live or die based on whether you get the deal or not, it is only purely hurtful in that it will prevent a lot of people from even engaging in the behavior that's going to develop the relationship that can lead to the decision. So, I love all this stuff that Glen comes from a much more structured sales history and backstory and experience than I came from. It's really helped me see a lot of how valuable that structure is, right? And the training is, because you don't have to be super psychological about it. You just go do the thing, and it winds up, the same effect comes out of it. It's like, if you need to sit around and think so long about going to the gym that maybe you don't spend as much time in the gym, you're not going to get healthier necessarily. But you can get to the point where you're healthy from either road. If you start very psychologically, if you start very much just in practice, they both kind of lead to the same result, or can, as long as you approach it kind of the right way. So.
Well, and I think anytime you're going into there and you're really looking for that sales, desperation bleeds through in what you say and how you say it, and you're going to have less respect. I think that's why I've been more successful over the years, because I really didn't give a crap. I looked into it I walked in, looked with the thought process is, I have nothing to lose. When I walked in, you're not my client. If I walk out, you're still not my client. Okay, that's fine. Let's see what we can do, and swing for big swings and make some big hits. Back when I was at the phone book, I had a lot of people laugh at me because I was talking to an auto dealer that, dealerships a lot of times didn't spend money on the phone books. They were doing radio, they were doing TV. And I kept talking to this owner. And I spent 3 months probably talking to him once or twice a week. And the last day the book closed, I walked out there with a check for $75,000 and a contract. And it was the largest sale they'd ever had in the Midwest for a phone book. But I stuck with it, and I kept giving him, buying information until he finally said, okay.
That's cool. So Glen, right now, how do you go about getting new clients for your business?
For my agency, a lot of it comes from word of mouth referral, because again, last year I spent so many time talking to so many different attorneys and restaurant owners and stuff like that. And I did a lot of those talks in California, where these lawsuits are really blowing up. So we get a lot of referrals from clients like that. If I'm not doing speaking engagements or someone coming in from that type of environment, I still like to do some email outreach. I still occasionally, just because it's fun for me, I'll go out once or twice or 3 times a month and just do cold calls. Because again, no one's doing that now. Everyone's either sending postcards or emails. So by going old school and differentiating yourself and going back and swinging some doors, you can talk to some people.
Let's talk about, I want to really quickly talk about cold calls. And has anyone ever cursed at you for calling them?
Oh, hell yeah. I've had people hang up on me, cuss me, all thing. But you know what?
Glenn, I didn't think you were going to talk about the personal relationship we had. Cussed at you and hung up.
But you know what? The nice thing about your phone book or the computer, they can yell and cuss at you, but I have not been hit by anyone through a phone so far.
What's your mindset going into something like that?
You have to kind of be like a duck and just let water roll off your backside. You have to understand that 6 out of 10 of them aren't going to want to talk to you. 4 out of 10 of them might want to talk to you. And if you can call 10 people a day, you'll end up getting 1 or 2 appointments. And out of those 5 appointments, 10 appointments a week, you get 1 or 2 sales. It's just understanding it's a process and not taking anything personally. And if you have a bad call, take a minute, shut the phone down, shut the computer off, go for a walk around the block, come back and start over again. Don't let that one bad call lead to another bad call and another bad call.
I mean, but it's also about like, this is it's a super profitable use of your time. Glen has a successful agency. He has other ways of making money, and he's still making cold calls because it makes you money, right?
I enjoy it. I mean, I can't date anymore because I've been married for 20 some years. So this is my conquest, to go out and talk to a customer and bring him on board.
That's funny.
I think that's why I've been better at sales. I enjoyed talking to women when I was younger. And so now I can just talk to customers or business owners or whatever. And it's just it's a conquest. It's still a psychological, dopamine in your brain.
It's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
People like to win.
Mm-hmm.
So Glen, what does your typical day look like right now?
That's what I love about our business is there isn't a typical day. I mean, yesterday was Monday with following up with people and getting things wrapped up from the weekend before, the work we did, and then some webinars at night. Today I have this podcast for a couple hours. I have a call at 11 with an interview for someone that does inspections of businesses for ADA compliance to get that aspect to share with our members. From there, I'm going to a video interview with a blind kid that uses technology as his life to share from that perspective. I have a training class at 4, and I'm still working with developers. So I was supposed to be in San Diego tonight at a WordPress meetup, teaching those developers about accessibility, but I'm doing it through Zoom. So I'm probably on Zoom 6, 8, 10 times a day talking to different people. I need to squeeze in 2 potential customers somewhere in between those. So it's just activity. I mean, if you're active and constantly doing things instead of messing around, you'll have more results.
Pretty simple. We're shooting this during the COVID pandemic. If you're sitting around watching Netflix all day, which I'm not saying I don't watch Netflix sometimes, but you're not going to move your business forward. There's tons of opportunity to do stuff right now. So
yeah, everyone's freaking out. I think crawling on the ball a little bit, worrying about this lockdown, stuff like this. And today I will talk with 2 restaurateurs. Between the 2 of them, they own 5 businesses that I think are going to hire us this week to build websites for them, because I gave them my COVID rescue plan or whatever. I lowered my entry point, increased my residual. They liked the fact that it was a cash flow type play, and they're like, okay, let's go. So I think you just have to pivot a little bit, be able to find different solutions. There are people still out there doing business, conducting business, and spending money. You just have to find out what will make them comfortable. And as long as it's a win-win, why not?
And like one of the things that I've seen like so many people post about is like the thing that they miss most about this this time, right? The shelter in place and the restrictions from going and mixing around with other people is they're missing relationships. And that's all marketing is. It's putting yourself in situations where people can start to get to know you and what you're about and what you do. That's a relationship. If you miss that, why are you not doing things that help build those relationships? I think that probably since this has happened, I've built more stronger relationships than I was doing before, because I was in a bit of a routine, right? I had kind of the same places I would go. I would see typically the same people. Online, that opens up just a massive amount of a break in that structure of my day, where I'm now, like Glenn talked about, like I'm doing new Zooms. I'm walking around and pushing, content and media, which is really information. It's important stuff that I can see will have a massive impact on a lot of people. So why not share that? And then people who consume it, we can start to develop more of a relationship. You can call it marketing if you want, but that's a little, like, I don't like to use business terms if I don't have to, right? It's a way, like, people are missing relationships, and they're also completely blind to the fact that you have a huge opportunity right now to build relationships that you probably would not have seen had this thing not been happening. So, that's what my little get on the soapbox and have a little preaching moment here. You're just, poke your head up a little bit and realize that this is a massive opportunity. Not only are you stuck not being able, well, also all these other people are looking for something to do. They might be on Facebook. They might be on YouTube. They might be sitting around spending a lot more time on media than they had done previously. And if that's the case, well, then be on media and share it with them. Right. So, I see this as just and then when we go back, same kind of thing. Well, okay, now there's a new change. Let me help people understand these important things. And in so doing, share it in such a way that you can start to build a relationship. And go ahead, Glenn.
I sold through the 2008 recession for the phone book. So one of these guys I'm talking to literally has 4 stores, same name, his own pizza shop in Southern California. And I literally met him 5 days before the lockdown started. And so I met him, and I was literally talking to another restaurateur that he knew, Caddy Corner, up in Orange. I'm in Huntington Beach when I was over there. And it was funny. I said, I'm going to be over talking to this guy tomorrow. It's like, oh, he's Caddy Corner. He goes, stop over. He goes, if I can't be there, my manager will be there. So I went over to talk to this guy after he was I was referred to him by another restaurateur that he knows and respects. And so I go and talk to his manager. They have one of those websites built by that company that should be a 4-letter word, but it's just WIX right now. And their website, I showed this flash, and you may appreciate this, David, or appreciate it. It's a pizza shop with a DA of 38 in today's Moz DA ranking. Number 1 on page 1 is 17. But their platform is so messed up that they're not on the first 10 pages of Google. And so God. I just told his manager, because she's like, we're doing this. She's a very aggressive young lady, which is okay. And I said, well, that's fine. But I said, you're never going to fix everything there yourself. We can fix it, but your cost would be up here compared if we do it right. And if I fix it right, you're on the page 1 for Google, and you're never going to be there where you're at right now. And so literally my sales presentation with her was 5 minutes. And I was out the door. And so I called the owner on the way out and said, Steve, I just met with your manager. I said, I think I'm probably upset her a little bit. I said, that wasn't my goal, but I'm not going to, beat around the bush. I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on or what you need to do. And then, like I said, a couple of days later, the lockdown started in California. But with dealing with the 2008 recession, I know that the businesses that were stronger and learned how to pivot better were businesses that were very good in 2009 and 2010.
Yeah.
And so I just said, Steve, have you thought about changing this on your website for delivery? Because are you guys doing delivery? Yeah, we're doing delivery. Okay. I said, with this lockdown, people not being out, have you looked into Every Door direct mail just to send postcards to the neighborhoods around you to let everyone know you can deliver pizza to them? Oh yeah, we're getting on that. And then for some reason, a few days later, I thought about, well, heck, if you're doing restaurants and people can't buy food at the grocery store, why not turn your restaurant into a meal prep? And so I just said, Steve, we've thought about half frozen pizzas or half baked ones you can put in the oven and send them 5 pizzas versus 1. And again, I get another text. Oh, we're right on that now. And I'm like, were you on that 5 minutes ago? But I kept giving him nuggets, giving him ideas to do stuff. And then he had his artist call me a week ago and said, I just want to kind of get an idea of what you're doing here and this and that. And she was the one that redid their new site on Wix. And she's like, that's what they were with before. And I just kind of explained to her, in my opinion, their deficiencies, what we could do for them and whatnot. And she's like, so we can make changes to the site, right? And I said, no, because if you do that, you're going to mess up this, that, or the other. And I kind of share with her a routine and a schedule and how we can do stuff. And so I can still make her look good while providing the service. And by the time we were done, she went from thinking, this is stupid, I don't want to talk to this guy, to she said, can I refer you to my other clients? I have some other businesses do blah, 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, I'm happy to talk to whomever you like. And so it took about 3 or 4 weeks because of everything going on. But now this guy's going to hire us for 4 locations. And I'll guarantee you, once we get his website number 1 without doing a stitch of things off site in the next 30, 60 days, now every restaurateur he knows in that area, he's going to think I'm God and going to tell about me.
So like one of the things that like Glenn, like I'm thinking about, as well as like kind of hearing and understanding the impact that your offer can have and explaining that is massive. Like there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't have the confidence to sell. If you have something like, if there's a drowning child and you have a flotation device, do you hand it to them? Yeah. Why? Because you understand it will save their life, right? Well, it's the same kind of situation. If you understand the impact of an offer and you know it can be delivered efficiently and effectively, it's not, you naturally then want to go do that. I think a lot of people see so much fuzziness and fogginess and they don't necessarily have a thing that they see as that important in their life, that it almost they feel reluctant to even go out there and do some of this stuff. And it was a huge shift for me to not only understand that intellectually, but also build my understanding in the stuff that I'm, marketing and promoting right now, to understand how impactful it is. I naturally feel inclined to want to do this stuff. I don't have to motivate myself and listen to, the Rocky theme song and drink 8 cups of coffee to get ready to do this thing I'm nervous about. No, I want to. I'm not necessarily great at it, but I continue to understand more and get better. And I want to share that stuff because I understand how important and impactful it is for people that are in the position to see it and to recognize it and to want it and need it. So I think that's a big piece that that it's really hard to see if you haven't done this sort of thing before, right? Once you've done it and you get in, you're like, oh, that is a very important thing. I need to start to shift my brain over to understand how impactful and important this is. That will help me naturally feel inclined to go out there. Glenn's already got that because he's been doing this long enough. He's understood that for a long time. Whereas if you have not, it looks like this huge, big, weird, foggy area where I couldn't sell, right? Oh, I'm not confident enough. I'm shy. I don't, whatever. But you'd still would put yourself in that situation where if you saw a thing that would save somebody's life, you would give it to them. You would tell them, hey, look here you go. Right. And so that noticing that just means you may not have enough clarity on needing to develop some sort of offer that is that sort of thing that you feel naturally inclined to want to share with people.
Yeah, you're just calling to offer to help.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
And I think it's kind of like, getting your system down. It's kind of funny. I've been doing it so long. It's just like second nature. Again, I'm back to the duck. You see the duck kind of shake their backs off and when they get wet and stuff like that. Before I go into a call, this thing jumps on. I go, let's go. By doing that, I clear my mind. I can focus on what I'm talking about, and I can go on the next session and forget about what happened beforehand. And if you just kind of get a routine, whether it be face-to-face, on the phone, on the computer, clear your mind, open up, make this next conversation the most important thing in the world, because to your client it is. And it's just getting that routine down of clearing your mind, asking good questions, providing a solution. That's all.
So that shaking off, there's a whole field of like trauma recovery exercise. I think it's called TRE for people with PTSD that have been through traumatic experience. Like our body holds memory. Mm-hmm. And, doing something physical like that really does, it clears some of it, and it lets you be a little more present and looking at just the nature of the conversation you're getting ready to get in. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love these video calls because one of the cheesy little things back when we had call centers and work with people out there talking to customers is put a little mirror behind where you're sitting, because when you're smiling, it comes across. When you're not, it comes across. So that's why I love these video calls, because it's back to my old days. I can see Flex sitting back into his chair. I can see him coming back up. Those are body movements that you have to pay attention to, because as a salespeople, typically we talk, and you see the person sitting back in their chair because you're kind of beating them up. But when you ask them questions and they're talking about themselves, then they start leaning forward because they're more comfortable with this. So that's why I love these video calls, and I've been using them for years. It was the closest thing I could get to that face-to-face interaction, to be able to look into Fletcher's eyes and say, oh, if I've lost him, I need to come back around, or, oh, he's engaged. He's giving me buying signals. Let me ask for the sale.
That's cool. So I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to start it all over, what would you do differently?
Well, now that I've learned that it's a lot easier to have good people doing the little smaller tasks for you, and just to go out and sell, I would start having virtual assistants. Now that I know how to hire virtual assistants, just because I was limited at the beginning of I could only sell 2 or 3 websites a month when I was back doing it myself, because that's how long it would take me to build them. Now that I have other people doing them for me, I can just go out and sell, communicate with people, and have people with skill sets that are my weaknesses, where my strengths are talking to people, communicating with people, helping people. Yeah, I can build a decent website. I can do SEO. I can do those things. But I did those to fulfill the need of to write, cash the checks my butt was writing when I was out talking to people. Now that understanding how to have a team and how to have systems in place, why start off hard when you can just start off and hit the ground running?
Fletch, you have any questions right now?
I would answer that question the exact same way. I'm only recently having, like I've talked about, I'm in partnership with Glen now. And that partnership has opened up to me the ability to have fulfillment in place for a lot of these systems, which that's not something I've ever really done. I've not ever had an employee, right? I had partnerships and those have worked well to a degree, but, where Glen can say, I wish I would have understood the systems and being able to get those VAs in place to do the stuff. I said I would answer it the same way. I understand the importance and impact of that. My way of getting that sort of accomplished, I would say, in my understanding, realization of that opened up after having gotten in a relationship, a business relationship with Glen, because that opened that up to me, right? I didn't have to necessarily go through the trials and tribulations of understanding how to hire and work with VAs and the communication and the systems and the SOPs. I understand the importance. Okay, Glen had those systems already in place. Okay, Glen and I can we work together in some way and figure out a way so that I can get access to that, because I know it's important, but I don't necessarily have to develop it and do it myself, right? And so if things feel overwhelming and daunting, you might want to look at, okay, well, how can I work with somebody maybe that has some of these systems in place? We do that with software all the time, but we don't really think about it we don't always think about it, especially if you're just getting into business. We don't always think about it from a perspective of, can I develop a relationship with somebody who already has these things in place? Because then that opens this whole thing up. It lets my, how do you say, cash the checks my butt road or something. I don't know. Maybe you're not writing with your butt. I do that kind of thing, but it lets you write more checks with your butt, right? Because they get cash. They'll clear. They won't bounce. So anyway, like I said, there's a way of looking at that where you can do it yourself, and it's very important. It opens everything up. You can also develop relationships with people who have those systems, and that has been a way that opened me up to a lot more stuff too. So,
well, and to give credit where credit is due, it was December 2014. We were living in California already. You know, I was adjusting to 3 times the cost of living versus Nebraska. That was kind of fun. And just out bringing on business. And, you know, when you're in that mode, you bring on whatever you can bring on. And I brought on this very large client in the addiction treatment industry. And within a few weeks, I'm just realizing I'm losing my mind. I can't do all this stuff. And so I sent a text message out to Mike Long and said, I'm just buried. I don't know what the hell to do. What should I do? And he's like, well, if you need help with people, he goes, call Morfolio. Morfolio's been doing this for years. And so he literally did a group Skype chat between the two of us. And I reached out to Joe. And so all of a sudden Joe said, yeah, give me a call tomorrow, the next day or whatever, 10 o'clock, whatnot. I don't remember exactly what it was back then. And so I'm talking to him. He's like, yeah. And he kind of explained to me what was going on. He's like, you know what? I'm just getting ready to join this coaching thing and share this. Everybody goes, if you don't say anything, I'll just give you all my videos now. I'm like, I'm not saying anything.
Nah.
And he went through exactly how to hire and build a team and what to do and whatnot. And that's how I started building my team 2 days later, was off of what Joe had been doing for years. I figured, and I think that's what's maybe different for me. If I can look at somebody and they have a model and I can take a look at that model and it makes sense, hell, I'll copy and do what you've done and try not to make the same mistakes you made. And that's how my entire philosophy started, with hiring virtual assistants and building a team.
That's so wild. So what Glenn, I think, is alluding to is when Joe Morfolio wound up coming into OMG Machines, one of the huge values he brought was that he'd been running VAs and teams offshore and things like that for years. And he had those frameworks, something I didn't know about. And Joe was my resource always for like, dude, how are you scaling? He's like, I got a VA doing it. I'm like, wait, what? Like, he's like, I did all the friggin' videos. Did you not go watch them? And I'm like, I need to go watch them or whatever. So I think we both get to point to Morfolio a bit here and say, thank you for, you know, having a framework and an understanding that, you know, and again, those are both relationships. We each had a relationship. Glenn talked to Mike Long. Mike Long knew Morfolio. Morfolio had this framework, right? I knew Morfolio because of Mike Long and OMG Machines. You know, David's familiar with Morfolio as well. These relationships are a lot more important, I think, than people realize. And understanding that impact and the impact of relationships. I mean, I pronounced it differently or whatever, but it can make you naturally inclined to want to go do that stuff. If you feel shy or reluctant to do that, it's probably just because you don't realize, or you don't clearly see how important it is, right? Because it just feels good.
Exactly.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's pretty fun.
He gave me access to it 2 weeks early because I was in a jam.
Well, there you go, man. I'm glad.
Well, I don't have any more questions. This has been interesting, and I appreciate you coming on, Glenn. So let's actually do 2 things. So if someone wants to hire you to fix their website, to make it more accessible to do SEO, where would they go for that?
You know what? Again, you can just go to webla.net.
Okay.
That's what we're kind of doing as a joint venture between Joshua, Mike Hayden, and myself. So yeah, we're helping customers and still providing a done-for-you solution for marketers around the country, because even though we were building a few hundred sites a year, it still took us 5 to 6 months to pivot into this. And the more I've talked to developers around the country last year, the more I realized for a lot of developers, it's taken longer. One of the gentlemen that has 4 locations that we spoke to yesterday, that he's referred me now to 6 other restaurants in Southern California. His developers have been working on this for over a year, and he's nowhere close. And so it's just been eye-opening for different businesses that I talked to. I got a guy and he's working on it. Oh, how long has he been working on it? 6 months, a year and a half. I'm like, they say, how long will it take you to fix it? And I said, we can have it done tomorrow. What? I'm like, we have a system down. And do we do that for everyone? No, but to kind of give someone some shock and awe,
Right.
I can have one meeting today. I can walk in tomorrow and say, here's your website built on our platform. As you see, it's completely accessible. Why is it taking your guy so long?
Because he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of, what I've been sharing with people lately is literally with going through about 8 weeks, understanding WCAG, which are the standards website content accessibility guidelines by W3C, and I actually found a college that I could take a couple courses on it at, and they were self-paced courses. So I got through everything in about 8 weeks, and I came out of it and I said, it's kind of like, okay, I can breathe. Okay, now let's start building some sites. Build a site. Error there. Error there. I'm like, crap. And it just kind of reminded me of back again, when you're going through school, I got all the fundamentals from this, but the real world application, you had to learn to do trial by error. And the trial by error was probably the hardest part because, again, Fletch and I have talked about this with Mike so many times the last couple of weeks. It's against the rules to have 2 links from one page going to the same URL. And for years, we built a logo that links to the home page and had a home button. And that violates WCAG rules. And I kept getting this duplicate link. And I felt like I was hitting my head against the wall. And I finally called I was able to, through joining some different organizations within accessibility, I have about 4 mentors around the country. And I called one of them. I'm like, what the heck is this? He's like, take the link out of your logo, dumbass. Didn't you realize what this was? I'm like, no, it's what we've always done. But there are so many little nuances to it that that's why we've kind of gone down this road. It's just easier to help people, do it for them rather than teaching them. Because with teaching them, I got tired of arguing with people.
That's cool. That's a good story. I like that. Well, thank you for joining us, Glenn.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. This was fun.
Yeah. And so go to weballey.net. That's WEBA11Y.net. Check out what they got and don't get sued.
Excellent.
Also,
and maybe get a tax credit. You never know.
I was about to say, Fletch, isn't there something in the COVID-19 legislation that helps with this kind of investment?
It actually has zero to do with the COVID-19 legislation. It's something that's been in, but we can connect it that way mentally for people. It's totally fine. But yeah, there's an IRS tax credit. It's been in place for a little while now that can help you qualify for $5,000 to build your website the right way. It's a tax credit. So, having gone through and sold SEO and helped people understand the nature of it, it's not
so it
something
can be
I
free.
know about.
So it can effectively be free.
You've got to spend it's 50 cents on the dollar tax credit up to $10,250. So if someone's spending $10,250 per year with you, and you're building a website that's accessible, they can get a 50% on the dollar tax credit back. So it effectively makes your services
half off.
Half off, so to speak.
And it's a credit, so it's not a deduction. It's not like I'm taking money off of this. It's if you owe Uncle Sam at the end of the year $7,000 and you have a $4,000 tax credit, now you owe $3,000.
Right. So, and just to be clear, sometimes these tax credits, there's periods where they're viable and then they eventually might roll off or get less valuable over time. So I don't know if there's a time limit on this. So I would at least check it out for sure if you're doing any business online.
Well, I always tell everyone, check with your tax professional, but the way my CPA read it, and he was the one that helped me kind of understand this, is you can roll it back a year. So if in 2018 you paid a check-in, you could go back and get a refund for some of that, or it can carry over up to 20 years the way the law is written right now.
Cool. All right. Well, go to weballey.net and thanks for joining us. Have a great day. Bye now.